All right. Welcome to another episode of Groundwork, where we interview the leaders building the most interesting partner ecosystems in the world. And I am very excited to have Roman here with me today. Roman was on my team at Deel back when I worked there, running some of our most exciting venture partnerships, but also has a great career already in partnerships and a very bright one in the future. If you spend any time on LinkedIn, you're probably seeing some awesome travel posts from him or awesome thought leadership insights. And so it won't be an unfamiliar face if you're watching this on YouTube or somewhere where you can see a video. But Roman, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. Awesome to be here, Tai. This is great to reconnect with you as well, and overall happy to be here. Yes, my name is Roman. I'm currently leading partnerships at a startup called Fuelfinance, but previously we worked together with Tai at Deel, where I led venture partnerships in the EMEA region. And yeah, in general, I'm originally from Ukraine, currently based in Vilnius, focused primarily on Europe as a region in my career, having worked in partnerships in VC, before that in finance, had a number of small businesses as well. And yeah, happy to answer any questions on any of the topics that you may have.
Amazing. Yeah, well, maybe we could start with Katalista Ventures. I want to talk about partnering with VCs and incubators and accelerators and all of that good stuff, since you did such fantastic work at Deel on that. And, you know, that was a very successful partner business for us at Deel, right? It was probably the first time that I'd ever seen one work really well. So shout outs to Carolyn from Deel, who really initiated a lot of that work. But at previous companies, I'd tried to partner with our VCs, or, you know, I'd worked in a VC firm and, you know, companies were trying to partner with me, but it wasn't until I got to Deel that I really saw something like that working really effectively. And so I want to spend a bunch of time talking about that, but I want to take a couple of steps back first and start at Katalista Ventures. So tell us a little bit about, how you got started there, like how that job came together and what you were doing.
Sure. So I found that job through a Facebook community I was part of. Somebody invited me. I wasn't even supposed to be there, but I saw a post, and there was three people, essentially the partners, who were promoting their company and looking for people. And at that time, I had a business running. I had a consulting company for students in the US, and that business was generating enough income for me to have a good life. I wasn't really looking for a job per se, but I just saw a post, check out their LinkedIn's, saw that they are pretty popular and pretty important in the startup ecosystem in Lithuania. And I just decided to message them or reply or whatever it was. And since then, it was a great entrance to the startup ecosystem in general. I'm really happy with that experience. And Katalista Ventures was a accelerator and fund focusing on impact startups, where we would not only accelerate them, but we would also partner them up with corporates or other large organizations to essentially do open innovation or run different kind of projects. And my role was first running accelerator programs, and then I was also responsible for partnerships on the global scale, where we would work with companies like Oracle or Swedbank or large telco companies. So that was the experience. But overall, it was just incredible people who were gathered in one company, and I think everything that came out of it was just collaboration between them, different ideas, and even different business models that VC funds don't really use. That worked pretty well. And then I applied that knowledge at Deel once I joined straight after Katalista.
Awesome. Yeah. And for folks that don't are unfamiliar, a lot of large corporate companies will have innovation kind of incubator type teams. You know, it's like quasi corporate development, but also quasi IT team figuring out like what's future technology that they want to bring in and use for their teams, and like a bunch of other like quasi, hey, like let's just keep a pulse on the market for strategy so that we kind of know where things are going. And so large corporate companies will have these innovation teams, and they will work with VCs and accelerators to meet with their portfolio companies basically, and get like either adopt their products or learn from their founders, or maybe even acquire some of those companies. And so, when I was working at GGV, I had a number of these types of partnerships as well with large enterprise companies. It was something that like I didn't know existed until then, to be honest. It's like quite an interesting, it's like a startup function within a corporate company, right? Like, tell me a little bit about the nature of those types of partnerships and how that kind of prepared you for moving into more of a partnerships role.
Yeah. So those are probably the best jobs to have in a corporate, because it's probably the most fun. You meet startups every day and you run different innovation projects. Still, normally, in my experience, those internal organizations that are either innovation department or open innovation team, or sometimes they have even corporate venture capital teams as well, they are not very efficient. And especially in the larger the corporate is, and the more bureaucracy there is there, the more hierarchy there is there, it gets more and more difficult to actually have any impact within those. So I've spoken to a number of corporates from either Europe or the US that had those teams, and it's not really that they had impact whether the corporate invests into a startup or actually runs something with them. They just had sandbox environments for them to test things out. And there is those that are effective and those that aren't. In my experience, we actually work directly with the management of the corporates. For example, the CFO of Swedbank in the Baltics was involved in the projects we ran. And as a result, whenever we would partner up a startup with Swedbank, we knew that we had decision-making power to exercise to really run a pilot project that worked. And the same worked for smaller corporates, or for larger one, we would try to get somebody from top management on board that would be able to actually make decisions and help with that innovation project. And I would say that signing up the corporates that didn't have innovation departments in general, because in the Baltics, it's probably still not common, and 5 years ago, it was definitely not common, was not easy. But we always figured it out, and we always tried to find ways for them to see value in it, for them to really see it as a win-win situation, and sponsor either an accelerator or a hackathon or a collaboration, a pilot project on its own. But in general, I would say it prepared me really well for a role in venture partnerships, because I understood how VCs work, I understood how accelerators work, and I understood how to build relationships with them, what are their incentives, and how to leverage that being part of a larger organization. Because very often the problem is that people expect VCs to refer portfolio companies to your service provider. So let's say we were at Deel and we had really good team doing that. But in general, there is many companies who just come to a VC and say, hey, here is a discount. Now we expect all of your portfolio companies to use us. And that never happens. I don't know what kind of product you really need for that to work. It's all relationships. It's all really trying to position yourself as a trusted partner and advisor for them and their portfolio, and then really help them achieve the goal that the VC has, which is scale the company, make it a unicorn, or go to an IPO, sell it, and whatnot. If your company or service provider can help with that, the VCs will love you and everything will be fine. And if not, then what is happening? Like, do you think VCs really are eager to spend their time recommending a designer to their portfolio companies, or just a random SaaS company that simplifies 1% of one process within the operation? Probably not, because they are busy scouting the companies, interviewing them, making term sheets, investing and supporting them along the way. So that's kind of the understanding I think is needed to succeed in venture partnerships and build those relationships that then really deliver the results both for the startups, the VC, and the service provider or a product like Deel was.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to kind of dissect what you said there a little bit more, because it is extremely helpful, I think, for folks. And anyone listening to this right now is going to probably have a stream of questions they want to ask you to go deeper. So I'm going to do my best to think about some of the questions they would be asking. But I think so two of the things that I kind of heard you touch upon, number one is incentives, right? It's like, what's the why for a VC to introduce a company to their portfolio. And so like just for folks listening, a VC, dependent on the size of the firm, they might invest in, they might invest in a handful of companies, they might invest in hundreds of companies, they might have an active role in the company on the board, they might just write a check and like be kind of more of an advisor, have a relationship, or they might not be involved at all. And that all varies by the VC. But like in my mind, there's kind of like two sets of incentives. There's incentive number one, which is, hey, we invested in your company, like we invested in Deel. And so we want to help Deel grow. And so we're open to doing some work on your behalf to like help you grow if we can, because we know that that's going to help you grow, but it's also going to help us. It's going to have you say nice stuff about us to other prospective founders that we want to invest in as well, right? And I want to talk about the how of that one, where it's like, okay, how? And then afterwards, don't let me forget that I want to talk about, because this is what we did really well at Deel, I think, is like all of our not investors, we somehow managed to like find out like what incentivized them to recommend us to their portfolio companies as well. And that became really, really successful. And I think that one is like a real mystery for people that are listening right now. But so maybe we could start with number one. So like for people that are listening right now, you have most likely investors in your company who work with other portfolio companies and have like a really great extended founder network, and they might be able to introduce you into those companies if you're a good fit. So how do you assess, like to your point, how do you assess, is your product the type of product that people can make a recommendation? And then like, how do you make it really easy for that VC to be able to go and talk about you to their portfolio companies?
So I think that that's really the way to start for every company, whether you have a partnerships person or not, or whether it's a small company or larger one. If you do have investors, and this can be angels, this can be VCs, this can be accelerators, ask them how you can help them support their other portfolio companies. It can be sometimes building those relationships and giving advice on the topic. I don't know, you're a marketing software and maybe running a small workshop as to how to leverage marketing in general when growing a startup, or how to build a brand or whatnot. Ask them how you can help. And normally, because they invested in you, they already believe in you, they will find ways, or they'll help you find ways to do that. So they put you in front of the portfolio companies, and then it's up to you to deliver a message and tell a story that resonates, and really, in a non-salesy way, recommend yourself as the top expert and a service provider of whatever. At the same time, I would say that also having expectations here and managing those, where VCs probably, if they have, let's say, 200 portfolio companies, they probably won't recommend every single company to every single company, because then it's just a mess. It's chaos. Every company will serve every company, and then they'll just spend all the money they raise to buy SaaS products, which is ridiculous. So in this case, it's all about storytelling and really tying the value proposition of your company to the success of the portfolio company and the VC as a result. For example, with Deel, it was very clear. Every VC wants the company to grow international, right? Like the company that doesn't grow international, unless it's a US company or like in a really large economy, it doesn't have a chance to become extremely big and one of the Facebooks of this world. So clearly every company wants to go international. So when we talk to VCs, we are like, look, we understand that eventually your companies will hire internationally. We can simplify it and make it easier for you and them from compliance perspective, efficiency, and all the other stuff. So it's a clear value proposition that helps the VC achieve the goal of company going international and becoming a superstar globally. So there was a clear value prop, and we could tell the story really well that ties it to the success of the company and the VC. If you can't tell that story, then I would really doubt that your VC will recommend you. And it's also fair, because if they don't see you providing any support or good value to the portfolio companies, why would they connect you? It like really creates a bad precedent of them being bad advisors to the portfolio companies. So it's all about, is your product actually valuable to the portfolio of that VC? And if it is, how do you tell that story so that the VC understands it perfectly well and can reiterate it to the portfolio company and can tell your story on your behalf? But with your investors, it's going to be the easiest sell because they already invested in you. They already know that you guys are nice, or you have a nice product, so everything is fine. So it's not going to be super difficult. It's way more difficult when it's a random VC that you expect will care about your seed stage or Series A stage startup from Berlin and will want to put you as a perk or recommend you or whatnot. That's where the you really need to work on it. With your investors, most likely they will be happy to somehow support, whether it's putting you in front of portfolio companies or helping you arrange some event for them, or just sending a few introductions or emails. Just be specific of what you want and how you can help, and I'm sure that it will work out one way or another to some extent.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you touched on something there again when talking about the why and the kind of incentives that is really important and worth reiterating. Like VCs don't want to give bad advice, and they really want to give good advice. It's like much like consultants, like the VCs want to add value, right? And one of the biggest ways that they can do that, like if they're on a board or whatever else, is like by recommending ideas, people, tools, that are going to help that company solve a problem. And so I really like what you're talking about there. So like calling that out, that like, hey, one of the biggest motivator, like the reason why I got hired at GGV Capital is because they wanted to add more value to portfolio companies. And so they hired someone who was like a partnerships and BD expert that could, like when there was a partnerships problem, that they could have that person go and talk to the portfolio company and like help them with that problem, because they wanted to be like basically a trusted advisor. So you've like caught on to something there, which I really like. And you've also caught on to like this value proposition component, which I want to dig on and pick on a little bit more, because I think that that's really, really key. Because I think everyone listening to this is like, yeah, my company's product is super valuable and it solves problems, right? And it might, it's like, oh, we integrate with this thing that provides XYZ, and like, how do you transcend? Because ultimately, VCs are having hundreds of calls a year and thousands of text messages and like touch points and conversations with founders, and they're not operating most of the time at the granular level that a company's value proposition generally operates at, right? Like the value proposition you described for Deel absolutely nailed it, which is like, hey, at some point you're going to need to hire people overseas, like let us help make that easy for you. Like another one is like, hey, it's really hard to hire talent in the US at the moment, or oh, it's like very expensive and you're trying to save money, but like very simple distilled value propositions that like anyone can understand. And so how does someone think about like, okay, for the VC that I'm going to talk to, that's going to be having these high level business type conversations, distilling something down to a level that they can pattern match really easily and say, oh, I just heard this founder say something and I can pull this thing out of my pocket, which is Roman. And I'm going to say, hey, like you should talk to Roman because Roman can help you with your international office that you're thinking about opening. Or, oh, like, oh, you can't hire engineering talent in the US because they're all getting hired at Google. Have you thought about hiring them overseas? You should talk to Roman about that. And it's like immediately like a ace in the hole that they can pull out. And so like, how did you think about approaching that, where you have to distill down the value proposition and you also have to help them pattern match between like a problem the founder has and the value proposition that you are articulating?
I would say that's a great question, and probably the answer we'll find today, or part of the answer, is valuable not only in partnerships, but in general in sales, in any sort of role where you communicate your company to others. Fun fact, I went to a pitching workshop yesterday with my girlfriend, and a friend of mine was the workshop host, and I've ran similar workshops, maybe not as high level as those, and he asked people to try to pitch their ideas during the workshop. And people would come very confidently and they would just say, oh, yeah, we help somebody do something. Like it wouldn't be really clear. And then he would ask the audience, can you raise hands if you understood what they do? and then 40% got it, or 30% or 20%. And that's the problem that many founders have, but also the problem many people in general have. They go through the onboarding process of the company, they remember some buzzwords that the company does, and they just repeat it. They don't really think, okay, what exactly is the problem and the use case that we are targeting here? What is the incentives of the person on the other side of the screen or the conversation or the table? What the problem he's dealing with? Why does he need it solved? What will it have an impact on? Is it the revenue growth? Is it the company's existence in general? Is it the level of expenses they have and their burn rate? What is it? So I would say that really nailing that down within your team and being able to tell it to any single person that you meet. And okay, you don't meet like I don't know, you probably meet people who have some sort of understanding in business or startups. So expect that, but don't expect them to understand every granular process that a company is going through in compliance when hiring internationally. They wouldn't know it, but they know simplicity. Okay, we need to hire somebody abroad. We don't know how to do it. We can help. Like when you tell a story in a simple way, people can relate because they're like, I remember I wanted to hire someone. Why didn't it work out? I have no idea why. It was 10 years ago, but I remember there was some problem with it. And then you can kind of uncover it and go deeper. But I would say that when you talk to VCs, because their job is to listen to people pitch their ideas all day, right? Like most of the day is listening to startups pitch. Or even worse is to meeting them at some conference and them trying to tell you that their solution really is a game changer in crypto or Web3 or whatever. And you're like, please move on. It's over. So I would say that's what they face every day. So how can you really be different from that and not pitch like the most boring part of the process, but pitch the problem that the company may have, because they will not remember how to solve it. They will remember, oh, my portfolio company is facing a global hiring challenge. They are trying to hire engineers in Ukraine, but they don't want to open an office there and they don't know how to pay them. That's what they may remember. They don't remember, oh, it's extremely difficult to hire contractors in Ukraine because there is 11 different ways to do it and blah, 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 blah. Nobody cares. But if you remind them of the problems and then in a very simple way say how you can help them fill that gap, I'm sure that they will at least give you the time to explain how you do it. And most likely not, right? Like if you just approach a random VC and tell them, hey, we are helping companies like yours with something, they'll be like, okay, great to know. I'll keep you in mind and best of luck and you're awesome. But they won't really help much. But if you really nail it down and if you make sure that they relate to what you're saying and they can understand and they will remember a few cases when somebody asked this in the last 3 months, that's what you want. Because they're like, I remember John had such problem in Croatia. Do you have somebody in mind in Croatia? And then you're like, let me talk to John. Let's make an introduction. And I'm happy to listen to him and ask any questions to clarify. That's kind of the helpful consultative approach where you really explain it in the most simple way without any buzzwords, try to point at the problem they may have heard, and then just go from there in a helpful advisory manner rather than, oh, no. Every single company you invested in is a good fit. Trust me, our ICP is literally all people in the world. And then we are the solution for everything.
I love that, and a lot of wisdom in there. So at this point, we're going to our existing investors, and we're trying to identify some of the problems that could be coming up in conversations that potentially we have a value proposition for, and like we don't need to necessarily even ram the value proposition down their neck when we can really just be, because really we just want to be, hey, if my founder's running into this problem, I'm just going to text message Roman, basically, right? Like you don't even want them to pitch you. You don't want any.
Make
you
it
just
as simple as possible.
Yeah, just like, hey, if you hear this problem, I'm your man. I'm gonna help you out. Just send me an email and I'm on speed dial. So like, 2 questions on that. I think I don't want to simplify it because that is the very hard bit, right? Is like figuring out, okay, what are the problems that are coming up, and like the business level conversation, and like how should they be pattern matching. But then it's like, okay, so how do you build trust so that you become the person on speed dial, right? Where it's like, anything to do with international HR, anything to do with like global expansion, anything to do with like trying to decrease spend, I'm just going to reach out to Roman, and I'm just going to ping him because I trust him, and I know that if Deel doesn't do it, he's going to point me in the direction of the company that does do it. Like, how do you kind of cross that bridge and develop that trust? Because you have to do it obviously really quickly, but these people, again, they really don't want to give bad advice, and so like they're very careful about who they trust, and they meet a lot of people all the time, and so I'm really interested, like, developing that trust. What's been your experience with that?
So this trust is exactly what makes venture partnerships work. For context, I've met the person who actually started venture partnerships as a concept at AWS. I don't know, dozens of years. I don't know what number of years ago, but a long time ago. And his point. So now he's an investor at Sequoia. His point was, it's impossible to scale it. So it's impossible to scale venture partnerships to be like a partner program where you just have a person who organizes it and it works. Why? Because you need relationships and you need trust.
Yeah.
And normally companies build trust by having customers who are happy and good NPS and all that stuff. But in reality, it's the person who builds the trust by being helpful. My approach at Deel was always, and it was more long-term approach, and sometimes quarterly targets did not align with the long-term approach that I had.
But you always did very well against your target. I just want to say you were definitely a top performer on the team. So I don't want anyone to hear that and think that Roman wasn't smashing his numbers. Roman was an absolute top performer in the company.
Thank you. That is true. And I would say that the good example of that is that I hit my numbers for the first 3 quarters. I just hit them. Like, it was 100-something%.
Yeah.
And then the third one, or like the fourth one, was 300%.
Yeah.
But why is that? Because all that trust that was built over the year actually paid off.
Yeah.
So that's the point where, like, you can't expect it to work really, really quickly, because sometimes it takes time for you to really support the VC and the portfolio companies and really prove yourself before you can expect any sort of return on investment. And yes, I did hit my numbers, and I'm really happy with that. But in general, I would say that take it as a long-term game, especially if you are a founder, because building these relationships with VCs will go a long way, whatever you do, whether this company or next one, whether you raise funding or will ask them to recommend you. And the point is, how you build the trust is, first of all, be helpful. So if they're asking you a question, try your best to answer in the shortest period of time and give the best answer possible. For me, that was, for example, I don't know, I was on vacation and somebody messaged me emailed me about a question, how to hire in Singapore, and can you please help? There's this company. So I just see it on my phone. I immediately WhatsApp them. I tell them, hey, give me 10 minutes. I'll ask my team, and then I'll try to come back to you with a guide, and then this and that. And it worked out. And then there was, let's say, 5 such situations. So after 5 situations, when you receive a message back with exactly what you're looking for, potentially Deel had some guides that I could send, or like just some calculators or some other information where you can ask experts. That was really helpful. But in general, when you really help them, how can they not trust you? Because you are not there just to sell them something. And this is the approach I would take all the time. If you're partnering with VCs or anyone else for that matter, be ready to give first and give value first without expecting anything in return. And sometimes the return doesn't come for a year, but then it comes in the crazy results that you really didn't expect because of that. So I would say building those relationships is paramount. At the same time, other ways you can do it is serve their portfolio companies and come back with success cases. Ask those portfolio companies to recommend you. So for example, right now at Fuelfinance, we have a number of startups we serve who have investors. And then what we do is we ask those startups, hey, can you let your investors know that our reports are really efficient and really accurate and really good? And sometimes it comes the other way around, where the investor looks at the report, they're like, oh, wow, that's incredible. Like, how is it all structured in the best way, and all? Who did this for you? And then we get those introductions where we already have a proof and credibility that there is companies who've used their product who are happy. You know those companies, you invested in them. Let's discuss how we can work together and make more companies happy. So having that proof that it works is very good. Then also, I would say finding ways exactly how you can help them. For example, there is some VCs who are struggling with building their platform function. So when you were in the VC fund you were in, you were kind of within the larger platform team, you were supporting portfolio companies. Some are struggling with that. If you have expertise in that, just share it. Or if VCs are looking for somebody interesting, connect them. I mean, I've done a ton of those connections and introductions just because I thought, oh, wow, two cool people, they really can help each other. Why don't I connect them? Not part of my job description at Deel. I wasn't measured on how many connections I make from a personal network. But after that, those kind of people are the ones who will trust you versus somebody else who just comes and says, hey, here is a discount, recommend us or else. Like it doesn't really, like, I don't know how people expect it to just work.
Yeah, I love that. And again, lots of absolute gems in there that really stood out to me. Like, yeah, number one being genuinely helpful rather than transacting, right? I think the call out around urgency, like replying straight away and being like, hey, I'm on this, give me 10 minutes, and knowing, hey, like Roman's on speed dial. If I reach out to him, I'm going to get something back. If it exists, I'm going to get it back from him really quickly. It's like incredibly valuable. The other thing that you called out is like having their number, like being able to shoot them a message on WhatsApp, because the reality is my experience, and it's limited experience in VC, is like it's all text. It's like everyone's just shooting each other like text messages or WhatsApp messages, right? And like getting to that text or WhatsApp zone with someone quickly is probably a good way to be able to be helpful and demonstrate trust, provided that you don't do it in a creepy way, right? And then so like I really like what you were talking about bringing back the success stories and like using examples of success with portfolio companies to kind of like bridge that gap. Because I do think one of the trickiest things, like you mentioned, VCs are having sometimes like thousands of pitches a year. Certainly as a firm, thousands of pitches a year. Sometimes investors are having found thousands of pitches a year, which is crazy. And so, those people are seeing so many companies. And so whether it's a prospective investment or someone that like wants to help them or whatever, staying top of mind with them is really difficult. So if you're kind of coming back with success stories and other ways to be helpful, then that's really awesome. So then we talked about like, hopefully we're now nailing our existing investors with all of the top tips that you've mentioned. And then is like non-investors, basically like VCs that didn't invest in your company, is that just the same as what you described but on hard mode, or like very hard, basically like expert mode? Or is there something different necessarily that someone would need to be doing there in order, because you were very successful with that, right? Like incubators, accelerators, also like legit VC firms that didn't invest in Deel but still supported us a ton with referrals into their portfolio.
So the partnerships I had at first at Deel were only non-investors, and I only got investors when I already was leaving Deel. So that was the tricky part. That yes, in reality, I would say it's exactly what you said. It's like having the same conversations and the same kind of rules, just in a harder mode. Because first of all, you need to have a door open somehow, either through your efforts or through a mutual friend or through a connection, because simply to hear you out is already a victory. Because, again, VCs receive 100 million messages on LinkedIn and email and wherever to talk to them. They are the most in-demand people because they have the money to invest, and everyone wants the money. Apparently, this is the economy we live in. So the thing is that you need to somehow in that crowd of people stand out and get 30 minutes of their time to talk, whether it's a conference or somewhere else. How to do that? That's again a challenge, because your investor will probably take your call, but a random VC, that's debatable. So how do you get through to them is challenge number one. How do you prove yourself very quickly and really make sure that they see value in you as an individual and you as a company? And three, what incentives do they have to recommend you in general? Like you're a nobody, right? They have not met you until today. Why would they recommend you to a portfolio company? Now this is really the hard mode.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the same principles apply. Be helpful, really come into the conversation with an open mind. Yes, remember, I need to generate leads or revenue or whatnot. But remember that, look, unless we build a good, mutually beneficial relationship, it's not going to work. And if you have that mindset, I would say that's really going to work out one way or another. Also, like in sales, don't be afraid of no's. I received a number of no's from different VCs saying, no, we won't recommend this or that. We don't care. We don't have this problem. And that's totally fine. There is enough VCs or other types of partners in this world. So don't cling to that. I would say, unless, I mean, you can definitely try to explain and all that stuff. But if you really heard a number of no's from the same partner, let it go. Just
Mm-hmm.
move on. But at the same time, with other ones, take time to build those relationships, take time to help them. And they may have different needs. For example, with some VCs, what they needed was a co host for events. So we ran an event in Berlin. And our goal was, hey, they want to run events for their own portfolio companies. They don't have the full budget for it. They don't have the full, maybe, credibility to run content during those events. Let us help. We did a great event. There was, I think, 100 plus attendees. There was 4 unicorns on stage. And from that event, we generated some really good results that the event was really to help, but we used the event as the context and the venue for us to do our thing, which is to pitch the company we are working in. So doing events, helping with knowledge. So I don't know, right now at Fuelfinance, we do many webinars. So the topic of finance is important for founders, whether they are seed stage or Series A or Series B. So what we do, we have tailored workshops we run with VCs. We did the same at Deel, actually. I did like maybe 15 webinars per month or maybe per 2 months. But in general, it was something that, you come in, yes, you will mention I'm from this company. You'll mention here is a discount for the product if you need it, and the product is this. But maybe it was like 5 or 3% of the workshop. Everything else just pure advice or tips or just a little bit of fun as well, because nobody likes just content webinars. So it's really seeing where is the gap that you as an individual and you as a company can fill within that fund and their portfolio. And I think if you turn that around and just really find a number of those partners, they can be smaller funds, like, I don't know, an AI fund that has 20 portfolio companies. But imagine if those 20 portfolio companies over the next 2 quarters become all your customers. That's huge. That's 20 closed won deals. So having a small VC fund can make that change. It can be, I don't know, Octopus Ventures or Earlybird or Andreessen Horowitz, which all have hundreds of portfolio companies, and you will sign up only 5% of them, and still it's going to be huge. So there's plenty of VCs. Build relationships, have your, I don't know, partner network that you are constantly supporting, and it will work out. That's I would say the optimism that I approached my job at Deel and the current job and yeah, all the endeavors.
I love it. Yeah, I absolutely love it. And so let's close out talking about your new role. So you've transitioned into a head of partnerships role. Congratulations. That's very exciting. I was pumped to see that for you because, sad to see as a shareholder at Deel, I was sad to see you leave because I know you were creating a lot of value there, but also pumped for you personally in your kind of career progression. And so tell us a little bit about, as you've transitioned into this head of partnerships role, like for other people that are looking to make a similar transition, you're pretty early in this new role. What are some of the new muscles you're having to develop, or some of the skills that you're having to flex again that maybe you weren't in your previous role?
I would say that it's a pretty exciting transition. Thank you so much. And I mean, also learning from leaders like you and Dan Lancioni and many others at Deel who really built up like the partnerships function as a concept across different channels and different kind of verticals was really helpful in kind of getting the confidence that I can try it as well. The way I joined the company was we were connected by a mutual acquaintance that I helped out with some advice on LinkedIn. And then the founder of the company asked me, hey, can you explain to me venture partnerships, what it is? We had a call. I just tried to help. She was Ukrainian, I was Ukrainian. I thought, why not help people? That's nice. And then she offered me to join as a consultant and as an advisor. So I was helping them out with partnerships a year ago, just kind of a few hours per month. And it started working really well. Actually, VC partnerships was working. They ran a few workshops. They generated some leads. They realized they can work with affiliates. They realized they can work with influencers. And it became like a function in itself that generated, I think, at that time, 20% of the revenue they had. And then I was thinking of leaving Deel. It was a decision that I was considering to make. And as I decided to leave, I had a catch up randomly scheduled with the founder, not even like a consulting session, just a catch up. And then we just discussed it. And a few calls later, they offered me to join and built up the partnerships there. And my goal at Fuelfinance is really to find ways to partner with all sorts of organizations that would benefit from it, but also their clients, their networks, their communities, their portfolio companies would benefit in general. It's a really good product, so it's not a very difficult sell per se. It is a smaller company than Deel, way smaller, but I would say that there is really bright future in partnership there, and my goal is to also build the function there, build the processes, but also the team to really execute on the same level as Deel. Let's see, competing with the partnership team that Tai Rattigan built at Deel is not going to be an easy task, but I'm up for a challenge.
That's funny. Maybe you'll give them a more friendly portfolio of partners to start with than I did for you. That's very funny. I forgot about that. I remember that conversation around like when you started, which investors, like what your portfolio would look like to start. And I think we chose well from a growth perspective. But yeah, hats off to you, because obviously, like, you hit your numbers, but then you blew your numbers out of the water when you really hit your stride. And yeah, but I'm sure that it was a little bit challenging in the short term too.
It was fun. Yeah, it was fun for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, Roman, we're at time. I appreciate the time so much. You're a fountain of knowledge, and you're also just someone that puts out so much great value and contributes so much to the industry at large and everyone that you connect with. So on behalf of everyone that gets the benefit from that, I just want to thank you, because we appreciate it, and it's been great connecting with you. And I look forward to catching up again once you're a little bit further into the role, and we can kind of dig into your experience as a head of partnerships and how you're liking it.
I really appreciate it. Very kind as always. And coming from you, it really means a lot. So thank you so much. And yeah, it was really a pleasure to chat with you, share some insights from venture partnerships perspective, but in general, just nice to catch up with an old friend from Deel that we were in the trenches with, so to speak, in the corporate trenches.
Yeah, very much. Awesome. Thank you, Roman.
Thank you so much, Tai.